The throne room breathed like a living creature. It inhaled through the dripping wax of 100 candles and exhaled through the shifting shadows that danced along the columns of polished stone. The air was thick, not heavy in the way of humidity, nor suffocating like smoke, but dense in the way of expectations. It pressed against the skin, against the spine, against the mind. It was the kind of atmosphere in which every sound seemed amplified. The distant clink of armor, the fluttering fabric of a nervous lady-in-waiting, the soft scuff of slippers on marble. At the heart of this chamber waited the court, a mosaic of nobles, bishops, diplomats, guards, and servants, all outwardly still, inwardly calculating. They had gathered for a moment that was supposed to symbolize unity, divinely sanctioned authority, and the stability of the realm. But beneath the ceremonial veneer, every pair of eyes held a different agenda. Some were hungry, some resentful, some fearful. And then the great doors opened. A gust of colder air swept through the space, as if announcing the arrival of someone sacred or supernatural. In truth, it was only a woman. But the court did not see a woman. They saw a symbol carved out of myth and obligation. She entered slowly, each footfall echoing in the chamber like a distant drumbeat. Her gown was a masterwork of artisanship, deep crimson velvet, trimmed with gold, embroidered with symbols of dynastic pride, lions, suns, lilies, and the sacred knot of queenship. The train behind her was so long and heavy that it took 3 ladies to lift and guide it, ensuring that it never touched the wrong part of the ground, never wrinkled, never faltered. The garment was beautiful, but it was a prison in fabric form, binding her body, stiffening her posture, transforming her into an icon. The crown rested atop her head with deceptive grace. Anyone watching would have thought it delicate, as though it were forged from sunlight rather than metal. But the weight was immense. The circlet dug into the tender skin above her ears, pressing down with the silent authority of centuries. Every gemstone felt like an accusation. Every decorative flourish was a reminder of the life she was expected to embody. The queen kept her expression serene, the kind of serenity demanded of her, taught to her, pressed into her from childhood. Her chin lifted, her eyes steady, her shoulders pulled back. Not trembling, not uncertain, not weak, but beneath her composure, her heart thrummed with the rhythm of anxiety. It beat fast enough that she felt it against the walls of her throat. She was not afraid of being queen. She was afraid of failing to be what queens were supposed to be. And the tragedy, the deep and private tragedy, was that no queen in history had ever succeeded in fulfilling the impossible demands laid upon her, yet each had been punished for the attempt. She moved forward. The court bowed like a wave in her wake. A sea of heads lowered in perfect etiquette. The rustle of cloth, the scrape of boots, the soft thump of a ceremonial staff against the floor, all these sounds merged into one unified acknowledgement of her presence. But none of it felt like honor. It felt like surveillance. She walked beneath silk banners that depicted the victories of kings, never queens, and past statues of warriors whose swords were raised toward heaven. Even the architecture echoed male triumph. And yet, ironically, paradoxically, she was the one upon whom the fate of the dynasty depended. She felt eyes on her from every angle, some filled with admiration, others with envy, others with suspicion. She recognized the gaze of the archbishop, stern, sharp, assessing whether her expression adequately reflected piety. The chancellor watched her hands, judging the steadiness of her gestures. The Duke of Harenfeld squinted, as though trying to detect signs of pregnancy in the set of her waist. Pregnancy. Always pregnancy. A queen's body was not hers the way other women's were theirs. Her womb was a public matter, a royal matter, a political matter. It was a chamber where alliances were forged, wars prevented, and dynasties continued. Yet it was also a place of judgment. If it produced too slowly, whispers began. If it produced too little, the blame never fell on the king. She ascended the steps to the throne, or rather for the king's throne. Hers stood slightly behind and to the side, lower than his, narrower than his, designed not to seat power but to display it. A consort's throne, a throne of symbols, not authority. Still, she sat, arranging her gown with the precision of someone trained since infancy to be watched. She placed her hands in her lap, fingers interlaced, not too rigid, not too relaxed. There existed manuals that dictated how queens should sit, and scribes who judged whether they obeyed. The herald cried out her titles. Each one landed like another chain around her ribs. By the grace of God, Queen of, Lady of, Protector of, Protector. Yet she could not protect herself. Lady. Yet she could not make choices freely. Queen. Yet her power was borrowed, conditional, fragile. As the ceremony continued, the queen's mind drifted, not out of boredom, but out of necessity. She could not endure the gaze of the court unless she built walls inside herself. Quiet walls, strong walls, walls that held back the fear born with every sunrise and every sermon reminding her of Eve's guilt. Every day began with such reminders. At dawn she attended chapel. Not because she wished to, though sometimes she truly did pray, but because queens were expected to lead by example. The priest's voice resonated through the stone vaults, chanting verses designed to shape the hearts of the devout. But the sermons were rarely neutral. They carried undertones, warnings, insinuations. Women must submit. Women must obey. Women must beware their inherent inclination towards sin. When the priest looked at the queen, she felt the weight of 1,000 years of doctrine press upon her. After chapel came breakfast, but breakfast was never simply a meal. It was a stage. Courtiers watched what she ate, how much she ate, how eagerly she ate. Appetite was judged. Too little meant illness or anxiety. Too much meant indulgence. And every gesture of her hands, every sip of wine, every moment her gaze drifted from the table was noted. There was never privacy. Never a moment unobserved. Never a breath that belonged solely to herself. After breakfast, she joined the king for the council meetings. Here the contradictions sharpened into painful clarity. The same men who believed women were unfit for serious thought demanded her counsel on matters ranging from taxation to foreign alliances. They asked because the queen had earned a reputation, unofficial, unacknowledged, but undeniable, for wisdom. Her judgment was even, her instincts diplomatic, her intelligence sharper than any of them dared openly recognize. But she had to voice her opinions carefully, always gently, always as suggestions, never as commands. If she was too decisive, they whispered that she controlled the king. If she was too quiet, they whispered that she was useless. If she hesitated, they whispered that she was weak. If she spoke, they whispered that she was ambitious. The queen had learned to navigate their prejudices with the precision of a tightrope walker. One misstep, a word too bold, a gesture too assertive, could send her tumbling into scandal. And then, when the long day ended, another kind of scrutiny awaited behind the heavy wooden door of the royal bedchamber. The queen's role there was as complex and contradictory as every other part of her life. She must be a wife without desire, a participant without agency, fertile without appearing sensual. The king's embrace was not affection, not intimacy. It was duty, expectation, ritual. A queen did not own her body. Her body was owned by the crown. As she sat in the throne room during the ceremony, all these memories swirled together, a mosaic of obligations, contradictions, fears. She felt the crown press harder against her skull, as though reminding her, "You are not here to feel. You are here to embody. You are not a person. You are a symbol, a mask, a story to be written by others." The hall applauded as the ceremony concluded. She rose, bowed her head with perfect poise, and stepped forward. To the court, she looked divine. To herself, she felt like a painting, beautiful, polished, and trapped within a gilded frame. The bells rang at dusk, slow, resonant chimes that rolled across the palace like distant thunder. Their sound seeped through the stones, through the gilded tapestries, through the hidden stairways and servants' corridors, reaching even the most isolated chambers of the royal residence. For most, the bells marked the hour for evening prayers. For the queen, they marked the hour of judgment. She stood before her mirror, illuminated by the soft amber glow of oil lamps. The attendants had just departed after brushing her hair into a cascading arrangement of braids and curls, each perfectly symmetrical. The queen had insisted they leave early, She needed solitude, even if only 5 minutes of it. Her ladies were trained to obey politely, while secretly wondering why their royal mistress constantly sought silence. But silence was the only place she could hear her own thoughts. She lifted a necklace from a velvet cushion, a simple piece compared to the others in her collection, not adorned with gems or heavy metalwork, just a circular medallion etched with the image of the Divine Mother. The mother's serene face was carved with tenderness, her eyes cast downward in eternal compassion. This icon had belonged to the Queen's own mother, passed down from grandmother to granddaughter across generations of women who had suffered under the same expectations. Its chain was worn in places where fingers had held it tightly during moments of fear. The Queen traced the engraved lines with her thumb. The Divine Mother. The ideal of womanhood. The unreachable model. Virgin and mother. Pure yet fertile. Soft yet strong. Devoted yet unbreakable. Every girl in the kingdom grew up under the gaze of the Divine Mother. Every mistake interpreted through her perfection, every fault judged as a deviation from her divine example. But for queens, the comparison was merciless. A queen was expected to embody the mother in all ways, gentle, patient, endlessly giving, eternally composed, and above all, fruitful. The mother's womb had brought a savior into the world. A queen's womb was expected to bring heirs, yet the queen's womb remained silent. The court never mentioned it openly, but the whispers threaded through corridors, woven into glances, hinted in prayers spoken just loud enough for her to hear as she passed. May the Lord bless the royal house with new life. May the Queen be renewed in strength. May her body reflect her pure devotion. Innocent words on their surface, poison beneath. The Queen closed her eyes and breathed deeply, trying to ease the pressure in her chest. But the air would not come easily. It felt as though someone pressed a hand against her lungs. She placed both palms on the table before her, steadying herself. Her heart beat rapidly, too rapidly. She was not unfamiliar with these episodes. They had grown more frequent in recent months, and she hid them behind practiced smiles. She lifted her head and gazed at her reflection. Her face looked the same as always, elegant, composed, youthful, but her eyes betrayed the truth. There was a flicker of exhaustion there, the kind one saw in birds that had flown too far without rest. A knock interrupted her thoughts. "Your Majesty," a soft voice called from the hallway. "The High Priest has arrived for the evening blessing." Of course he had. He always arrived precisely 5 minutes after the bells. The Queen forced her breathing to steady, slipping the necklace over her head. She straightened her posture and smoothed the front of her gown before calling out, "Send him in." The doors opened. The High Priest entered with measured steps, his ceremonial robes flowing behind him like dark waves. His expression was solemn, not cruel, not unkind, but full of the weight of his office. He carried a staff carved with twisting symbols of authority, and in his other hand, a leather-bound book of sacred doctrine. He bowed deeply. The Queen returned the bow with practiced grace. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice calm but edged with something unspoken. "It is my sacred duty to guide the royal house in the ways of righteousness. Tonight, the scriptures lead me to speak to you about patience, endurance, and faith in the divine plan that unfolds beyond our understanding." There it was, the thinly veiled message. She sat on the edge of a cushioned bench, hands folded in her lap, as the priest paced gently across the room, reciting holy verses about the trials of faithful women. Sarah, barren in her youth, was made fruitful in the Lord's time, he intoned. Hannah, who wept in despair, was answered for her devotion. Elizabeth, who waited past the age of hope, was rewarded with grace. Each name fell like a stone into her stomach. Each story was a reminder, a warning, that the burden of fruitfulness was hers alone. The priest paused beside her. "My queen," he said softly, "the kingdom prays with you. The court prays with you. I pray with you. Continue to show humility in your struggle. The Divine Mother sees your faith." Humility, struggle, faith. Words that sounded noble when spoken from a pulpit, words that tasted bitter when one lived them. She bowed her head respectfully. What else could she do? To question him would be to question the order of the world, so she let him offer the blessing. He placed a hand lightly atop her head. The gesture was meant to comfort, but it made her feel small, like a child being reminded of her place. "May the Divine Mother watch over your body and strengthen it," he murmured. "May she guide your steps toward the fulfillment of your sacred duty." When he finally withdrew, the Queen felt drained. The blessing had taken only minutes, but it carved new lines of fatigue into her soul. The priest departed without waiting for conversation. He rarely did. His purpose completed, he moved on to other rituals, other duties, other souls to shepherd. The Queen remained seated, her pulse thudding in her throat. It was only when the door clicked shut behind him that she exhaled. Not a gentle breath, but a shuddering release, as though she had been holding herself rigid for hours. And in truth, she had. She stayed like that for several minutes, letting silence wash over her. When she lifted her gaze again, it drifted to the window. Beyond the glass, the sky had darkened to deep blue, the first stars winking faintly against the horizon. The palace gardens lay still below, illuminated by torchlight that flickered along the winding paths. She longed to be down there, walking barefoot on the cool grass, free from watchful eyes. When she was a child, before queenship, before betrothal, before the heavy crown, she had spent hours outdoors, running through fields with wildflowers braided in her hair. She remembered those days with a fierce ache, like remembering a person she had lost. Somewhere in the gardens crickets sang, somewhere a fountain murmured softly, somewhere, in the darkness, the world existed without judgment. She rose from the bench and approached the window, pressing her fingertips lightly against the glass. The reflection in the pane showed her not as a queen, but as a silhouette, a simple shape, a fragile presence. In that reflection, she saw a woman longing for something unnamed. Freedom, purpose, love, understanding, worth not tied to her womb? She did not know. Perhaps all of them. A soft rustle of fabric signaled another presence. The Queen turned to find one of her most trusted attendants, a young woman named Ilara, standing quietly just inside the doorway. Ilara bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty," she said, "the king requests your presence in the Privy Council chamber." The Queen's heart sank. It had been a long day already, and the king rarely summoned her privately in the evenings unless he sought counsel on something troubling. "Did he say why?" she asked. Ilara shook her head. "Only that it concerns matters of political stability." Political stability, the euphemism behind 100 possible crises. The Queen nodded and allowed her attendant to lead her to the chamber. As she walked, the corridors seemed longer than usual, their shadows deeper, their silence heavier. Every step felt like a descent into another layer of expectation. At last they arrived. The king sat alone at the table, maps spread out before him, candles burning low. He looked up as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Close the door," he said. Ilara obeyed, leaving the Queen in the room with a man she knew intimately yet barely understood. The king gestured for her to sit. She did. He studied her in a way that made her stomach twist, not with affection but with appraisal. "I will speak plainly," he said. "The realm needs an heir." Her pulse quickened. The words were simple, the meaning was devastating. "I know my duty," she answered quietly. "Then you understand," he continued, "that if the situation does not change soon, the council may demand alternatives." The Queen froze. Alternatives, the polite term for mistress-born heirs, for annulment, for replacement, for political destruction. The king's voice softened slightly, not with kindness but with caution. "I am not saying it will come to that, only that pressure is mounting. You must do everything in your power to meet the expectations placed upon you. Everything in your power." She wanted to scream. She wanted to ask him if he knew what she already endured. She wanted to ask if he cared, but queens did not scream. Queens did not protest, so she bowed her head once more. "I will continue to pray," she said. The king nodded, satisfied. To him, the matter was concluded. To her, the world had just grown darker. When she left the chamber, her steps were steady. Her expression was composed, her posture was flawless, but inside she felt the Divine Mother watching her, not with compassion, but with impossible expectation. She walked through the corridors like a ghost, the medallion at her throat cold against her skin. When she finally reached her chambers, she shut the door and leaned against it, trembling. The shadows in the room seemed to whisper all the insecurities she fought to silence. "You are not enough. You will never be enough. The kingdom will judge you. The court will blame you. Your body has failed its purpose." She pressed her palms over her ears, but the whispers lived inside her. No amount of silence could drown them out. Slowly, she crossed the room and knelt before a small altar, lighting a single candle. Its flame wavered, fragile but persistent. She touched the medallion of the Divine Mother and whispered the only prayer she had strength for. "Please see me." The candle flickered as though in answer, or perhaps in sympathy. And in that moment, alone in her chamber, the Queen felt not divine expectation or holy duty, but the crushing weight of a world built to measure women by their suffering. Dawn crept into the palace with pale, washed-out light, the kind that arrives reluctantly, as though unsure whether the world beneath it deserves illumination. A thin mist clung to the ground outside, softening the edges of towers, battlements, and gardens. The first servants began their morning duties, their footsteps muffled against stone floors still cold from the night. In the Queen's chamber, the atmosphere remained heavy, as if the shadows from the previous night had not yet learned how to leave. She had barely slept. When she finally drifted into unconsciousness, her dreams had been filled with faces she could not recognize, women wearing crowns of thorns or veils of gold, women whispering prayers or confessions, women with lifeless infants in their arms or with serpents coiled at their feet. Every figure looked like her. Every fate felt like a warning. She woke before the bells rang. Her body ached in the quiet way that comes from a heart carrying too much silence. Ilara helped her dress in a gown of deep emerald, a color chosen carefully for its symbolism. Green meant renewal, fertility, hope. The court would notice, they always noticed. Even the colors a queen wore were interpreted like omens. As Ilara adjusted the clasp at her shoulder, she glanced at the queen's face. "Did you sleep, Your Majesty?" "A little," the queen replied softly. It was a lie, but a gentle one. Ilara would not push. With the final adjustments made, the queen stepped out into the corridor, where two guards stood at attention. They bowed, then escorted her toward the Great Hall. The morning meeting of the court was already underway, a daily ritual of politics masquerading as ceremony. As the queen approached the doors, she heard the low murmur of voices inside, the creaking of benches, the rustle of parchment, the clatter of swords against armor. The guards swung open the massive oak doors. The hall fell into silence. Every eye turned to her. This was not the silence of reverence, though it pretended to be. It was the silence of evaluation, of inspection, of subtle, hungering judgment. As she walked forward, the long train of her gown gliding behind her, she felt the weight of 100 gazes. Lords, ladies, advisors, servants, even visiting dignitaries, all watched her with expressions too carefully composed to trust. Some observed her with curiosity, others with pity, a few with thinly veiled frustration, as though the Queen's private body had personally failed their public ambitions. She took her seat beside the king. He gave her a curt nod, acknowledgement, not affection. The Chancellor cleared his throat and began reading reports. Harvest shortages in the northern provinces, increased bandit activity on the trade roads, negotiations with neighboring realms, routine matters, predictable matters. But beneath his steady voice, the Queen sensed tension coiled like a serpent beneath the table. She knew court politics too well to be fooled by calm tones. She watched carefully as the Chancellor spoke, noting the flickers of expression among the council members, the sideways glances, the subtle smirks, the tightly drawn lips. They were waiting for the moment when the discussion would turn, inevitably, toward the one topic that no one wished to name openly, yet everyone treated as the center of all political gravity: the succession. The king's cousin, the Duke of Varin, shifted in his seat. His fingers drummed impatiently on the arm of his chair. The Queen recognized the gesture. He was preparing to speak. And indeed, when the Chancellor finished reading his report, the Duke leaned forward. "If I may," he said, his voice carrying too easily across the hall, "I believe the Council should address a matter of paramount importance, one that risks the very stability of our realm." A ripple of unease passed over the gathered nobles. The Queen kept her face neutral. The King narrowed his eyes. "Speak plainly, cousin." The Duke nodded with feigned respect. "The kingdom has endured many challenges," he began. "But no challenge poses greater danger than uncertainty. Without an heir, our alliances weaken, our enemies grow bold, our people question the future." Murmurs spread through the hall, soft but unmistakable, and then the Duke added carefully, "We must consider alternatives." A cold rush of dread washed through the Queen's veins. She felt the hall tilting, not physically, but emotionally, politically, the balance of power shifting ever so slightly, like a floor beginning to crack beneath her feet. The King sat straighter, his jaw tightening. "Are you implying," he said slowly, "that the Queen has failed her duty?" The Duke raised his hands innocently. "I imply nothing, Your Majesty. I only remind the Council that the future of the Crown cannot rely on hope alone. Hope, the kingdom's most fragile currency, and the Queen's most fragile excuse." She felt the silent agreement drifting through the hall, not openly spoken, but there nonetheless, a shared understanding among those who believed they served the realm by pressuring her. One lady of the court, young, ambitious, with eyes sharp as daggers, whispered something to her neighbor. The Queen caught the movement, if not the words, but she didn't need to hear, she already knew the tone. Another nobleman leaned back in his chair, gaze sliding down the length of the Queen's form, as though seeking visual confirmation of her failure. A bishop coughed stiffly, turning his head to hide the judgment in his expression. The Queen inhaled slowly, carefully. Too deep a breath might reveal fear, too shallow might reveal offense. A queen had to breathe in a way that pleased everyone and satisfied no one. The King raised a hand for silence. "The matter is closed," he declared. "The Queen and I continue our efforts. The realm will endure." But his voice lacked conviction, and the hall sensed it. The Duke bowed with rehearsed humility. "As you say, Your Majesty." His eyes, however, glinted with triumph. The Queen felt something inside her tighten, a knot of humiliation and anger so sharp it bordered on physical pain. Yet she kept her gaze down, hands folded gently, expression serene. Serenity was her armor. Serenity was her cage. The meeting continued, but the Queen barely heard the words. She drifted inward, into the chambers of her own thoughts, where the air was heavy and the walls pressed close around her. When the council was finally dismissed, she rose from her seat with perfect grace and walked beside the King toward the private hallway. As soon as the doors shut behind them, she sensed his irritation simmering beneath the surface. "You must not let them provoke you," he said without looking at her. "I said nothing," she answered. "Your silence speaks," he replied. The Queen stiffened. How could silence speak louder than words? But she did not ask. The King would not entertain philosophical questions. He rarely entertained questions at all. He walked away, his footsteps echoing sharply down the corridor. She remained still for a moment, feeling the emptiness settle around her like dust. It was Ilara who found her minutes later, standing in the quiet hall with her spine rigid and her gaze unfocused. "Your Majesty," the attendant whispered gently. The Queen blinked, returning to herself. "Yes, I'm all right." Again, a lie. Ilara hesitated. She was one of the few permitted to express concern. "Would you like to rest?" "No," the Queen said. "I will walk." Walking was safer. Resting meant thinking. Thinking meant unraveling. Ilara nodded and followed at a respectful distance as the Queen moved through the palace. She passed through tapestry-lined corridors, past marble statues of forgotten rulers, across sunlit galleries where portraits stared down at her with painted perfection. She paused at one in particular, an enormous mural depicting a queen from centuries past. The woman stood beneath a beam of divine light, cradling an infant prince in her arms, surrounded by adoring subjects. Her painted expression was serene, otherworldly, impossibly calm. The queen felt her throat tighten. "Do you know her story?" Elara asked quietly. The queen nodded. "The chronicles say she was virtuous beyond reproach, kind, gentle, beloved by all." Elara hesitated. "That's what the chronicles say." The queen turned her head. "You've heard another version." The attendant studied the mural's serene face. "I've heard she was clever, ambitious, that she outmaneuvered rivals, survived assassination plots, and ruled alongside the king in everything but name." The queen frowned. "Why is that not in the chronicles?" Elara's answer was soft but steady. "Because the court needed her to be a saint, not a woman." The queen looked up at the mural again. A saint, not a strategist, not a leader, not a survivor, not someone with flaws or desires or grief. A saint, a symbol, a story crafted to control others like her. The queen felt something shift inside her, small, subtle, but distinct. A crack along the edge of something long buried, a truth whispered from deep within. Perhaps the world does not fear sinful queens. Perhaps it fears powerful ones. She stepped away from the mural, her footsteps quieter now, her posture still perfect but carrying a new tension, not of fear, but of awakening. As she walked through the palace gardens, the sunlight warming her face, she allowed herself to breathe fully for the first time that day. Around her, roses bloomed in rich crimson. Fountains sparkled. Birds darted through the branches of ancient trees. Life existed here without political consequence, without expectation. For a few minutes she felt almost human again. But even in the garden, she sensed eyes watching her. Servants pruning hedges, guards patrolling the paths, ladies strolling nearby, all pretending to mind their duties, all finding ways to glance at her midsection, her posture, her expression. The queen lifted her chin. The garden was beautiful, yes, but it was also a cage, and every bird in a cage eventually learns the shape of its bars. Night arrived earlier than usual, or perhaps the day had simply been unbearably long. By the time the queen returned to her chambers, the sky outside had darkened into a muted indigo, streaked with faint silver clouds that drifted like ghosts across the horizon. The palace breathed differently at night, more quietly, more honestly. Servants whispered instead of spoke. Nobles slipped through corridors with hidden intentions. Guards clutched their spears with tighter grips. The walls themselves seemed to exhale the tension they held during the day. The queen dismissed her attendants and remained alone in her chamber, a single candle burning on the table beside her. Shadows flickered across the walls, stretching and shrinking with each movement of the flame. Her thoughts felt equally unstable. All day the words of the Duke echoed in her head. We must consider alternatives. She had grown accustomed to whispers, but this was different. This was strategy. This was planning. This was threat disguised as practicality. For months she had felt the kingdom tightening a noose around her, gently at first, then with increasing firmness. But today the pressure had turned into something more precise, more deliberate, a warning shot. She paced the room quietly, her bare feet soft against the cold floor. The hem of her nightgown whispered across the stones like drifting silk. Every few steps she stopped, staring at the window as though expecting the night air to deliver answers. But none came. Her breath grew shallow again, the same dread that visited her every night now. Her fingers trembled slightly as she ran them through her hair. "What do they want from me?" she whispered into the empty room. "What do they want that I haven't already given?" Everything. They wanted everything: her beauty, her decorum, her virtue, her fertility, her silence, her obedience, her body, her soul. And still it was somehow not enough. She braced her hands on the window ledge, leaning forward as though she needed the cool air to keep her upright. Outside, the moon hung low, bathing the gardens in pale silver. She used to find peace in moonlight. Now it only reminded her how exposed she was, how easily seen, how easily judged. Behind her, a small sound broke the silence. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The queen turned sharply. For a moment, fear prickled beneath her skin. the instinctive fear of a woman alone in a palace filled with secrets. Then the intruder stepped into the light. It was the king. He wore a heavy cloak, its deep blue fabric embroidered with gold thread. His face was partially lit by the candle, revealing only fragments of his expression. "Forgive the hour," he said, voice low. "I wish to speak privately." The queen straightened, masking her tension with calm propriety. "Of course, my king." He approached the table and studied the flickering candle flame. The shadows carved his features into harsh angles. There was something in his posture, stiffness, calculation, that put her on guard. He turned his gaze toward her. "The council pressed hard today," he said. "Yes," she replied. "You handled it with grace." Grace, a queen's greatest and most worthless weapon. The king continued, "You understand they speak out of fear for the realm." "I do." "You understand that their concern is genuine." She hesitated, only for half a second, but it was enough for the king's eyes to sharpen. "I understand," she repeated. The king stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of smoke on his cloak, close enough that she could feel the weight of expectation radiating from him like heat. "There are rumors," he said quietly, "rumors that you have turned away from your duties, that you have lost hope." Her breath caught. "My duties?" she whispered. "I have done everything. You must do more." Her pulse quickened. "How? What more is there to—" "You must change the way the court sees you." Her brows knit. "What do you mean?" "You must be seen visiting the chapel more frequently," he said. "Praying at dawn, attending every mass, participating in charitable rituals. You must hold audiences with holy women. Increase your almsgiving. Spend more time among the nuns. Show them your devotion." The queen stared at him, not with anger, at first, but with disbelief. "My devotion?" she echoed softly. "You want them to believe I am failing because I'm not holy enough?" The king's jaw tightened. "I want them to stop questioning your worth." Worth, not her humanity, not her feelings, her worth, her political value. She felt something inside her shift, like a hairline fracture finally breaking open. "I pray every night," she said. "I bear every humiliation silently. I endure every whispered accusation. And you want me to go on display? Like a penitent seeking forgiveness for something I cannot control?" The king's expression hardened. "Mind your tone." Her breath trembled. "My tone? You ask for obedience. And I have been obedient. You ask for silence. And I have been silent. You ask for faith. And I have prayed until my knees bled." She lifted her chin, voice gaining strength she had never allowed herself before. "What more do you want from me?" The king stepped back slightly, not in fear but in surprise. He had never seen her raise her voice, never seen her anger light beneath her composure. "Control yourself," he said sharply. Her eyes flashed. "I have controlled myself for years." Silence fell between them, taut as a drawn bowstring. Finally the king spoke. "If you cannot provide an heir," he said, "you must at least provide certainty." Certainty, the coldest word she had ever heard. "What certainty?" she asked. "That you remain loyal," he answered. "That you remain above suspicion. That the court cannot question your purity, your chastity, your dedication." "My chastity?" she snapped, incredulous. "You think they question that?" "You know how rumors spread," he said. Rumors. The old poison of the court. She felt something inside her unravel, not in weakness but in awakening, like a veil being torn away, revealing the true shape of her cage. She stepped toward him. "Do you know why they whisper?" she demanded. "Because a queen without a child is dangerous to them. A queen who cannot give them certainty makes them uneasy. They would rather think me sinful than admit the truth." "And what truth is that?" he asked coldly. "That the system is built to blame me," she said. "No matter what." The king's eyes narrowed. "Be careful." "Why?" "Because I speak aloud what everyone already thinks. That if a king fails, he is unlucky. But if a queen fails, she is wicked. That if a king errs, he is human. But if a queen errs, she is evil." Her voice rose, steady, unstoppable. "That if a king commits adultery, It is a man's folly. But if a queen is even rumored to look at another man, she is a traitor to the throne. The king grabbed her wrist, not violently but firmly enough to silence her. "You forget yourself," he said, low and dangerous. She pulled her hand free. "No," she said. "For the first time, I remember myself." They stared at each other, two people bound by duty, divided by truth. Neither moved, neither blinked, neither yielded. At last, the king turned away. "This conversation is over." "For you," she answered quietly. "Not for me." He froze, his back to her. Then, without another word, he left the chamber, his cloak sweeping after him like a dark wave. The door slammed shut. The queen remained standing in the center of the room, chest rising and falling with deep, shuddering breaths. She felt the tremor in her hands, the heat in her face, the fierce, terrifying clarity in her mind. For years she had played her role, silent, dutiful, obedient, holy. Tonight, for the first time, she had broken the script. She sank slowly into a chair, pressing her hand to her chest as her heart pounded. She expected fear. But fear did not come. What came instead was release. A strange lightness filled her limbs. A sense of truth uncoiled inside her, raw and trembling but undeniably alive. She realized something in that moment, something so dangerous, so powerful, that she almost dared not speak it even to herself. The world fears queens not because they might sin, but because they might speak. And tonight she had spoken. The consequences would come, she knew that. But so, perhaps, would freedom. Because a queen who breaks her silence is no longer a symbol. She is a woman, and a woman who refuses to be erased is the most frightening creature a patriarchal court can imagine. Night falls over the palace like a velvet curtain soaked in ink. The torches along the outer walls sputter in the wind, their light thin and restless, as if even fire is hesitant to linger near the events unfolding inside. The corridors smell faintly of wax, tallow, and cold stone. Somewhere, a scribe coughs. Somewhere else, a courtier whispers. But from the center of the great complex comes a silence so taut, so charged. It feels as if the entire kingdom is holding its breath. At the heart of that silence sits the queen. She is alone in the throne room for the first time in years. No ladies-in-waiting hovering behind her, no guards standing at attention, no courtiers pretending to examine tapestries while secretly watching her every move. The candles tremble, as if sensing that something in the room is unbalanced, trembling like a scale just before it tips. She breathes in the emptiness. For once, the throne behind her feels neither like a punishment nor a promise. It simply exists, carved oak, cold to the touch, adorned with lions that never roared and fleur-de-lis that never bloomed. She places her hand on its armrest and wonders how many queens before her touched this same wood, wondering the same thing. 1,000 footsteps, 1,000 masks, 1,000 judgments. Her entire life has been shaped by notions older than her name, older than her kingdom. She remembers with a clarity that burns how monks had once lectured her at 12 years old about Eve's sin, how woman was the door through which wickedness entered the world. She remembers reading treatises insisting that her mind was too delicate for statecraft, even as she memorized ledgers and diplomatic protocols faster than her tutors could assign them. She remembers the crown lowering onto her head and realizing, not with joy, but with vertigo, that she had just been measured against the Virgin Mary before she had even drawn her next breath as consort. And now, after years of political storms, whispered slanders, stillbirths, foreign alliances made and broken, and accusations thrown like daggers, the realm waits for a verdict. Not her verdict. She is the queen, but queens do not pass judgment over their own fates. That privilege belongs to the chroniclers. If they call her chaste and obedient, pious and suffering, she will be remembered as a saint, a glowing silhouette preserved in illuminated manuscripts, forever patient, forever forgiving, forever humble. If they call her ambitious, cunning, manipulative, or adulterous, she will be remembered as a sinner, a serpent in silk, a shadow behind the throne, a danger to lineage and kingdom alike. Both fates erase her, but only one destroys her. She steps away from the throne and walks toward the long windows that frame the courtyard. A storm gathers outside, heavy clouds rolling like dark armor across the moon. Rain taps against the leaded glass with increasing urgency, like 1,000 fingers trying to get in. It is on nights like this that kingdoms change shape. Footsteps echo down the outer hall, slow, deliberate, ceremonial. She knows them. Anyone in the palace would. They belong to the king's counselors, to the bishops and magistrates summoned to decide whether her reputation can still uphold the scaffolding of monarchy, or whether she must be removed. Removed. The word tastes metallic. It can mean exile. It can mean annulment. It can mean imprisonment in a convent. It can mean worse. She closes her eyes and lets her breath shake out of her chest. For years she bore the expectations of purity and obedience. She birthed heirs and buried infants. She smiled through pain and negotiated treaties that saved the kingdom from famine. She endured rumors of infidelity every time she so much as exchanged a glance with a foreign ambassador. She sacrificed everything except the one thing she refused to relinquish, her mind. In the Chronicles, that alone is often enough to make a woman a villain. The heavy doors of the throne room creak open. The queen turns slowly, her expression composed, her gaze steady, the way one faces an executioner or a god. 6 men enter, their faces lit by the flicker of candle flames. Robes dark as ravens' wings sweep across the marble floor. Their expressions are unreadable, carved into the stoic masks of those accustomed to holding power without ever being held accountable by it. Behind them, the chief chronicler steps forward, clutching a bound volume of parchment. His ink-stained fingers tremble ever so slightly. It is not fear of her. It is the weight of what he carries. Her story, or rather the version of it that will go on to outlive them all. The queen raises her chin. "You have come to pass judgment," she says softly. The eldest counselor, a man whose beard seems older than some cities, clears his throat. "We have come to document the truth, Your Majesty." The words ring false even as they leave his lips. She knows, and they know, that truth is a matter of convenience, shaped by whoever holds the quill. "Before we decide," another counselor begins, "we must question you on matters of conduct and loyalty." She nods. She has been questioned her entire life. The ritual no longer frightens her. What frightens her is the knowledge that the answers do not matter. The storm groans outside, thunder crawling across the sky. The interrogation begins. First, they ask about her alliances with foreign envoys, alliances she made under the king's orders. Then, they ask about the silver she moved from the treasury during the famine, money that saved thousands, but which they now suggest was spent too boldly. Then come the insinuations of vanity, pride, political overreach. Finally, inevitably, they ask about her fidelity. The question spreads through the room like poison. "Have you ever," the chief chronicler asks, not meeting her eyes, "been unfaithful to His Majesty?" She could laugh if it weren't so cruel. The king has been unfaithful so publicly that the palace gossips no longer bother whispering about his lovers. But a queen's body is a kingdom's cornerstone. A hint of infidelity from her and the dynasty itself becomes suspect. She answers truthfully, "No." The room holds its breath. But truth is not what they are here for. They are here for a narrative. The whispered rumors, a dance shared with a visiting noble, a letter misinterpreted, a moment of private conversation with a foreign ambassador. Those are enough for suspicion, and suspicion is enough to justify erasure. The council withdraws to deliberate, leaving her alone in the cavernous room once more. The queen sits not on the throne but on the steps below it. The storm batters the windows. Candle flames bow low in the wind. Somewhere deep in the palace, bells toll, though no one has died. Not yet. Minutes or hours pass. Time blurs. When the council returns, they carry a verdict, not in words, but in parchment. The chronicler steps forward, unrolls a page, and reads. It is not a sentence. It is a story. Her story. And yet that's not hers at all. In this version, she is obedient, gentle, patient, a saint, a mother who suffered nobly. A woman who never interfered in politics, a consort who remained silent in all matters of state. The queen stares. This is not who she is, but it is also not an accusation. It is something stranger, colder. They have rewritten her into an absence, not a sinner to be punished, not a saint to be exalted, a shadow, a figure so quiet, so passive, so erased that future generations will forget that she ever influenced wars, treaties, harvests, diplomacy. They will forget that she ever contradicted the king or argued with counselors. They will forget that she ever existed as a mind, only as a symbol. She expected a noose or a convent. Instead, they give her a silence so large it swallows her whole. The chronicler finishes reading and bows. The council leaves without further ceremony. No exile, no prison, no annulment, just erasure. The queen stands alone as the last candle sputters out. Her pulse roars in her ears like distant surf. Outside, the storm opens, rain lashing the windows in sheets of silver. She walks toward the throne one last time, her steps echoing through the emptiness. She touches the carved lions again, and for the first time she feels pity for them. Stone creatures forever guarding a seat of power they will never truly possess. Then she does something no chronicler will write. She steps up onto the dais, lifts the nearest candle and holds it above the open ledger of her rewritten life. The flame bends, hungry. If she lets it fall, her false story will burn. But if she burns it, history will fill the gap with something worse. Another chronicler will write her anew, maybe as a monster this time. Her hand trembles, the candle drips wax onto the parchment, a single drop, like a tear. The queen closes her eyes, then she blows out the flame. Darkness washes over the room. By dawn, the scribes will record that the queen retired early to prayer. They will note that she lived quietly thereafter, pious and mild. They will capture her in soft brushstrokes, in gentle metaphors, in sanctified silence. Yet somewhere, far in the future, a scholar will find a page in a forgotten archive, a page with a wrinkle in the corner, a faint scorch mark, a hardened bead of wax, and they will ask themselves, who was she really? A saint, a sinner, or something far more dangerous, a woman the Chronicles tried and failed to fully erase. The video fades to black. The questions linger. The story ends not with an answer, but with the echo of a life too complex to fit the masks she was given.